Now, while waiting for the glue to dry on the end plate of the Patchbox, I went ahead and made the spring I'm going to need for it. And this actually is just a casting. You can get that from a number of suppliers. You have to grind off the casting screws, of course. And I did something a little different to mine. You can see that they come with a straight end, which is supposed to be driven into the wood at the end, but I don't like that. I've seen that on originals and it was done, but in time wood shrinks and swells. It's going to force that out, or the wood that you drive it into is going to split. So I just don't like that. What I've done is I've taken a few minutes to heat it up with a propane torch, spread it out a little bit wider, and drilled it and countersunk it for a small screw again. And of course that will make sure it stays in place and you won't lose it in time. And I'll show you how that's fitted into the lid in just a minute here. Now, my mind the wood is still a little bit tight, so I'm going to go ahead and file a little bit, scrape a little bit, and it seems to be tight right at the back end. You can see it's getting close. Take a little more off in here. Okay, now I'm going to check the gaps around the edges. I can see where it's hitting on the butt plate. And I've got to take a little bit down on this edge here. It's hitting high right in this area here. And this is just a matter of keep trying, keep fitting, keep looking carefully with good light around the edges. See where it's hitting, where it's not. So to save you a lot of boring time, I'll come back to this as soon as I get it all fitted up. But you get the general idea. Now it's all fitted up. Pretty close fit. Next thing to do would be to smooth all this down so that it's even with the butt plate. You want to go ahead and file those heads off the screws. If you've got a little lip like this has, you don't want to take too much off of the lid base, because then it'll look very funny on the top edge. It'll be thinner on one side than the other. So you want to try and make sure that whatever you take off looks even. If you need to take more off the butt plate and blend that in, that's fine, because the butt plate has plenty of material in it. Alright, that looks pretty good. Now you can go ahead and sand this and get it all nice and smooth, and take down the edges of the lid a little bit closer. You see I've got a pretty good lip right there going on, and you want to bring that on down almost to a feather edge, but not quite. And we can do that while it's in the vise. So I'll go ahead and shape this lid a little bit more before I come back and sand all this smooth. I'm just going to use a coarse metal file to finish up the edges here to start with, to kind of get it the way I want it to look. The next thing you want to do is put a little thumb notch in the back of this, because getting this lid off, you lift up on the spring and back on the lid, and it's good to have a little notch there to be able to stick your thumb in. And all you do to create that is just want to make a gouged out portion here. I'm just drawing it roughly in where I want it. And I'm going to get a gouge chisel and a small 3/16 straight one. You want to mark the back of the piece and then slowly gouge back to that. And these can be placed however far up you like them to be. I used to go about a ½ inch or so. Trick is get them deep enough so that your thumb can catch it easily. I try and get a nice even arc on the cut. About like that, just enough to get your thumb underneath there. And you can sand that a little bit later on. But the next step I want to do is fit that spring to the underside. Going to fit the spring to the lid next, and you want it centered in the lid, and I like the arm to go straight down the center of the lid. Now these come with a cast-in angle to them to match the angle here. It's angled this way, but it's also angled this way, side to side, since this is not straight with the line of the center. So you want to get it on there if you need to. On some of these you might have to heat up the head, tweak it a little bit by bending it with a pair of needle nose pliers to get it so that you don't have any gaps underneath here. Yeah, I got this one pretty good. Now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and mark it. Cut around the outside edge and just inlet that spring right into the top. Now up at the top end here, you're going to have to make a cutout for the spring to be able to move up and down. So you have to make sure you go deep enough and to make that notch. I'll finish doing this in a minute, but to make that notch, just take the square file, or if you've got the edge of a heavier file, you can use the edge and cut that on down. Need to go just a tad deeper, because you got to go so that this portion here that catches on the butt plate is going to be able to go below the surface of the lid. So it'll slide past the butt plate. So let me finish inletting this and get this set in, and I'll show you exactly how that looks. Alright, I got the spring installed now, and you can see I got the screw in, and I want to make sure that nothing sticks above the level here, because you're going to want to slide in easily. The only thing sticking up should be this tab on the back end here. That's what actually catches on the butt plate on the inside. But first of all, what I've got to do is cut out a notch in the wood for this to lay down into, because you want it to be free enough to catch the butt plate. So you set it in place. Mark it with a pencil where the opening is. And we're going to cut out a section right there. I want to go down just a little bit further than the height of the spring at this point, so it doesn't really need to be a lot. Alright, that should be enough. Now let me test it again. It is catching now, so the wood was holding the spring up. But you see, I've got a little bit of play in that now, which I don't want. See, the way it operates though is that the spring comes up, pull back on the lid, and it slides off. Now, there's two things I can do. One is add more to the spring, which is a little tricky to do. The second thing is to actually put a little bit of brass in there. I can solder or silver solder a little plate of brass in right there, and then take that down to exactly where it needs to be. So the next step will be to remove the butt plate and put a little piece of brass on the inside. So let me get that done and we'll continue on. Well, got the lid fitting good. There's no play in it now. It operates nicely. What I did was soldered a new piece of brass in. Went from side to side. I decided against doing a small portion just where it hits, because it looks better when it's all the way across. You'll see a bit of a seam there, but with the lids on you'll never see it. Spring is done, installed, locks up good and tight, comes off easily. Now the very last step is to get rid of the flat spots. So you're going to draw around the edges of the lid. And then simply file and rasp right up to those lines. So that everything blends together nicely. No big flat spots. And that's pretty much it. There's a lot of steps to making one of these, and hopefully yours will come out as well as this one did. I might deepen the cavity a little bit. I like mine about 3/4 of an inch below the lid, and the same with metal patch boxes too. I like a little depth to them so you can get accessories in there.